This is the fifth lesson of the series titled Old Cosmic Consciousness. It can also be heard on tape number 602E.
Cosmic Consciousness, October 17th, 1969, Dr. E.W. Blighton, 1 7/8 speed.
Every one of his friends. God made this division of his love and bestowed this particle on each one because there was nothing else in the way to give. For if man were not created of him, Genesis would not have said so. For this is a book written of revelation. And upon this, every one of his friends, of his children, in proportion to their enrichment with him, then he let down upon these particles the shroud of human form, and the nature, and the temperament, and the spirit, in order that by its powerful working it may transmute to its own quality all of the particles that are attached to it, until the lover's clay is wholly converted into the love, and all his acts and actions and looks become so many indispensable conditions of love. This state is what one or the other has talked about in talking of the union. Alike and likened unto by those who regard the inward meaning and those who regard the outward expression. For this clay was born, created, and man was created under the influence of the totality of the cosmic and all its influences. Man, in his scientific approach, has tried to keep away from that which would lead him to God, even though in the microcosm he looks and says, here too is something which likens me, or likens the life of the creation unto that which is spoken of in the Testament. For if he moved into the macrocosm, there would be no corner to back away into. And again, if he did this, he would then have to admit that there was and is other people beside those on earth. And this would be a terrific barrier to his consciousness, because he has repeatedly felt himself the only brother, the only creation of our great Father. You must remember that in the water we drink, and in the food we eat, and in the air we breathe, and all of which passes down part way into the throat, there are thousands of germs or cells of life that might become infectious or dangerous to the health if it were not for the vibration and the pattern of reality that we, each one, are. And the mature tries to prevent their destruction, the creativity, by robbing them of their power in their transmutation, and their right in our system before they enter the system. It is already geared to the reality that all that enters must be of the same vibration that I am. Incidentally, this will indicate to you how ridiculous it is to say that the tonsils can be removed from the throat of the child or adult without in any way impairing or injuring the health and normal standards of the person. You cannot remove any part of the physical body without lowering the body standard of vibration. All of the many cells in the human body have distinctive functions. They are like the employees of a great factory. There are some whose work is more or less monotonous. They do the same thing over hour after hour, day after day, with every little thinking, with very little consciousness, because the functioning is purely automatic. Just as two employees in a business sit at a large desk and do nothing all day long but pick up letters after letter or postcard after postcard from a basket and copy the names on them into an index card to be placed in the file. So certain cells in the body do certain things all day long. No matter what the letter or how many or from who are placed in the basket on the desk of these two operators, all they know they are to do is to take each letter in turn, find the name, address at the bottom, write it on the card, and send those cards to the index department. To make no difference to whether the name is that of a wealthy person or a poor person or an unknown person. They never question whether the person is black, white, or yellow, young or old, Jew, Christian, Muslim, or Buddhist. It is not their business to ask about the nature of the person who wrote the letter, nor do any investigation or anything of that kind. Each of the letters in the basket has been read and examined by somebody and passed on to them, and their business is simply to copy them, file them, see that they are filed into some large, cumbersome index, and then they may be burned in the incinerator. In this same way, most cells of the human body function. Not one of these cells is given any arbitrary, personal, discretionary power. The consciousness in it is of one definite nature, knowing just one function at any time and in all circumstances. That consciousness in each cell constitutes its intelligence. That intelligence can be increased where it will work more rapidly and therefore more efficiently or more in harmony with the other cells, then it cannot change its functional nature. The intelligence in a hair cell by which it by which it produces the root of the hair can never be so modified or changed that it will produce the elements of a fingernail or a bone or the tissue or the outer cuticle of the skin or the blood, the lymph, the pancreas, or any of these other things have their own distinct score and follow it. Cells can become sluggish in their action just as human beings can and do, and who are well trained in certain functions, and they too hold back. The same is true in regard to the cells of the body. Each may carry on its function true to form, and each may produce and do nothing more than it was intended to do, but it may do this work sluggishly, slowly, more or less imperfect. But this condition is due to the objective conditions of the mind and your objective thinking, and the conditions concerning that which I speak. In your case, I merely wish to say here that although each cell has a divine consciousness and intelligence in it to do its work under the normal conditions, would do its work efficiently and without any special training, the fact remains that each cell has to contend with the physical body around it and with the objective intelligence in the human body, which often interferes with the cells doing their work perfectly. And then we have those near catastrophes when the human body that they are functioning with gets some radical idea and starts to think about things which influences their total output. So we see that when we are dealing with a multiple number of cells in the human body, we are dealing with a multiple number of entities, and we have two important things to keep in mind. First, the individual activities and the efficiency, and second, the collective efficiency of the combined cooperation. When we speak of the development of cosmic consciousness, we are speaking of a dual condition in the human body. We are speaking first of the quickening and awakening of the individual consciousness in each cell, so that each cell will be working at 100% efficiency in its definite function. And second, we are speaking of the collective cooperation and united function on all parts, on all cells, thus producing a high degree of combined cosmic consciousness in the flesh, in the human body. Now, such development is bound to produce results in many directions. First of all, we become more sensitive to vibration. We become more sensitive to the reality that we do have an effect upon our individual bodies. We do have an effect upon the functioning and the quickening. Perhaps the very first indication of such harmonious cooperative efficient function of the divine consciousness is our body is an improvement in health. The lungs, on the other hand, constitute a pair of organs that are the most flexible of any in the human body, for they can be very far below par, very weakened, and in fact greatly diseased without greatly affecting the general health and without causing any outer sign of inconvenience. It is wonderful to think how life can be maintained in the human body even when only a part of each of the lungs can still function. Persons who have suffered from tuberculosis in one lung and have had that one so nearly destroyed that it could not function at all have continued to live apparently in normal health and carry on good work without pain or inconvenience with the use of only one organ. There are perhaps very few human beings in the world today whose kidneys and bladders are absolutely perfect health or a perfectly normal condition. There are very few of those spleens whose spleens are perfectly normal, and goodness knows there are very few whose various glands are up to normal. Yet such persons may never have any daily illness or in bed at times, and never have a physician examine them, nor have found it necessary to take a spoonful of medicine or a single pill. The consciousness of determined function so perfectly balanced, because all of this that we are talking about is the balancing of force and power and energy motivated by the Spirit of God, which is part of the personality of creation. It must be apparent to you then that if ill health is so vague a thing that it is hard to determine, so perfect health must be more or less indefinite and hard to determine. And then, who knows what perfect health is? It is very much like the matter of insanity. The greatest experts in the world have not been able to determine where sanity leaves off and insanity begins. And no scientist would ever attempt to say that any human being is 100% sane, and perhaps no one could say that any person is 100% insane. This, therefore, if therefore we are in some degree of ill health and do not know it and have no manifestation from it, and we feel as though we're in perfect health, how then can we tell when this ill health is improved and corrected? In other words, if there is a possibility of each one of us having a certain percentage of abnormality in our human body, or a certain percentage of our weakness or ill health, without being aware of it, how are we going to tell when such abnormalities or weaknesses are overcome and improved? If you or I feel today that we are in perfect health and that there is absolutely nothing wrong with us and that we feel as well as ever we could feel, how then do we know? Actually, there is a great change takes place with us when we become conscious inertly, and there is a quickening of the spirit. Then the consciousness starts to be felt, the consciousness of our being, the consciousness that we are not the body, the consciousness that there is a greater power moving in us than we had supposed. This is the time when through our work, our lessons, our concentration, our meditation, this is the time when we start to be cognizant of the soul within, the light within, the self, that we raise the consciousness of the whole body and then all of the cell structure responds. We are not changing the frequency or vibration in reality. We are improving the sensitivity, the consciousness. Now, this is not saying that consciousness is sensitivity. This is saying that the consciousness will become evident as the sensitivity rises. If the soul rises up to God, as we say, she becomes godlike and able to know the above and below. She then obtains the power to heal disease, to make useful inventions, to institute wise laws. Man has no intuitive power of his own. His intuition is the result of the connection existing between his soul and the spirit, divine spirit. The stronger this union grows, the greater will be the intuition or the spirit of knowledge. Not all perception of the soul are of a divine character. There are also many images which are the products of the lower activity of the soul in her mixture with the material elements. The consciousness which exists of that which we know not. Divine nature, being the external fountain of life, produces no defective images, but if her activity is perverted, such deceptive images may appear. If the mind of man is illuminated by the divine light, the ethereal vehicles of the soul become filled with light, and the consciousness of it becomes one with the whole being and the body. When one has traveled around the world and has noted various ways in which groups of humanity live, one cannot help but feel that these various good, bad, and indifferent conditions of life are, after all, only a reflection of the consciousness within people. Those whom are quite satisfied to live in sordid environments in the midst of filth, sickness, poverty, and unattractiveness have most certainly little or no development of the cosmic consciousness within them. We see what has happened with the mystic in every land, and with the adept who has started upon the path toward cosmic attunement. That path is just as definitely cut out in the road map of the world as an automobile highway that has been carefully engineered and planned and constructed under government supervision. That path of development, like the automobile highway, leads to the shortest and nearest and safest goal of our desires. The adept who has felt the urge to step upon the path of development soon finds that he has unconsciously been moving in a direction that is entirely different from the path being taken by those around him. He finds his footsteps leading him away from the things that were satisfying him in life and the things which seemed to be perfectly natural. He seeks first of all separation, isolation, and silence. Well, that ought to be a good motto, the 3 S's. He wants to be a part with himself and away from the multitude. He wants to be at times where he can feel that he is alone, except with the ever consciousness of the divine presence. But he also wants to serve those he wishes to be away from. He wants to get away from the noise and the hustle and the bustle of the routine movement of the mechanical field of life. It is not that he wants to shirk his duty or his obligations, or to ignore the work he has at hand to do for man, but because he feels that he can better accomplish his mission in life if he is independent and free and above the limitations that have been previously enslaving him. But he knows his responsibility. In all lands and in all times, the students on the path has sought the solitude of the mountains or the valleys, the seashores or the woods. In selecting a place that is appropriate for his period of meditation or his silent contemplation, he has unconsciously sought a clear and more wholesome, a more ennobling and inspiring environment. Before he started upon the path, it may well be that the average adept has believed that an improvement in his earthly environment would constitute only of an improvement in his material senses. He may have felt that a more magnificent home, a more magnificent garden, or a more luxury and comfort and convenience would constitute a real improvement in his earthly situation. After he's placed his foot on the real path of cosmic development itself, he finds that his steps are leading him not to greater and more costly material things and conveniences, but really away from them into a more primitive or more natural state, less costly and more wholesome places. He finds that the trees and the shrubs of an isolated mountainside become a more beautiful garden, and groves of many admired places that he has ever seen. He finds that the hard rocks on the mountains overlooking a large valley is superior to any throne in any palace raised high upon the impressive diocese of nature's hills. He finds the most simple garments is most beautiful upon him and more satisfying to his own personal vibration than the most elaborate gowns or costumes of any court. In these things he has slowly but surely become conscious of what? Not that the scene has changed, not that his eyesight is any better than it was, not that he didn't love to see the scenery before, but now he not only sees, but he is conscious of the living reality. That which he failed to observe in the past and which contributed to the sordidness now stands out as a dominant factor, and so he seeks means to overcome the undesirable things around him. Not that his eyes were any better or that he could not see well, not the improvement of sensitivity made any difference in his sight, but now he experiences the life, the living life, the consciousness, the cosmic consciousness, and everything takes on a new color, a new reality. It exists now, where before it was part of something else. Now it is a part of him. he becomes unconsciously mindful of the great laws, namely, that before the lips can speak words of prayer in the presence of the great Master, the lips must lose their ability to say any unkind thing in the presence of anyone, anywhere. In a moral sense, his code of life also begins to change. He remains free of man-made creeds and dogmas, but at the same time he is willing to patronize any that is helping others to find the path. Those things which amused him and held him in interest appear now to be fruitful and a waste of time. While he can admire classical music played upon an organ in some somber cathedral, he knows he can go out into the valley or the mountaintop and hear similar divine music as the music of the spheres. His reading and studying, all his hours of mental exercise or awareness, are arranged to contribute to his own new awakening cosmic consciousness. For now he is becoming aware of the God mind. The God mind and its activity. Man never, and neither did you, ever experience the reality of a rose until you could feel and sense the color of the rose and its form. Until that is done, the form and the color are out there. You admire it. It is a flower on a plant. It is not part of you. And this is the same thing with all things in our life as we move into the reality and begin to experience real life. It is a practice. Is there any question? It is a common practice to find persons closing their eyes when they are concentrating either in thinking or listening. The rapid impressions that are made upon the eyesight as they sit in any room are often disturbing to the processes of concentration, the attention upon something, and for that reason they generally visualize a person in concentration as having their eyes closed, or their hands over their eyes, or one hand over their forehead, for the sake of shutting out these disturbing and distracting impressions that come through the eyes. You recall that one of the greatest sculptors, Rodin, made a famous statue, The Thinker. In this figure we saw a man sitting down, slightly bent over, with his head resting in the palm of his left hand, and with his hand partly covering his eyes, and shutting out the impressions of eyesight. This is typical of any picture that would be made by artists anywhere of a person in concentration. But we must also shut out the impressions of the ears. And the reason for sitting comfortably is a relaxed condition in concentrating is in order to shut out the impressions of touch or feeling. Then we must gradually eliminate taste and smell. all senses must be shut out if we are truly to enter into a perfect state of concentration. It is said some of the greatest thinkers could think only when they were smoking. And we have the stories of eminent writers who say they cannot think without smoking. Mark Twain, for instance, smoked constantly when he was writing and said he could not write or create ideas for his writing without smoking. They said in quite a common practice for the big businessmen to take out a cigar and light it and sit back in their chair and blow blue smoke toward the ceiling while they were thinking. Although such kinds of thinkers there are many kinds of thinkers which resort to smoking as a help for concentration. There were, and after all, this is not really the reality. This is something you have created as a tool for your own benefit. You made it so, you said it. Therefore, it functions that way. We have seen little boy who was reading a Wild West story or a story about Indians walk along the street and so lose himself in the story that he bumps into people and walks past places he intends to go. This would illustrate the complete concentration that is necessary. He is not conscious of his walking or his outer environment at all. And so the businessman cannot be conscious of keeping the cigar or pipe in his mouth. He cannot be conscious of its taste or anything about it, and at the same time focalize all of his thoughts on the idea that he has in his mind. In order to concentrate perfectly upon any thought, every degree or every aspect of our consciousness must be centered toward one point. Not only must all of our 5 objective faculties assist in this regard, but those more subtle faculties, such as that of keeping our balance while sitting in the chair or while standing. That is why so many lean forward and rest the head on the arms and the hands with the elbows on the table while concentrating. We find we must eliminate all external impressions and all internal functions as far as possible. Of course, this done does not mean unconscious and involuntary function of the organs of the body. But it does mean this, that your thoughts are working distinctly without interruption in the purity of the pattern. The intelligent soul substance receives from the Logos an inseparable immaterial body and enters thus into being. That is where we sit, that is where we stand at the present time. That is why that when we start to detach ourselves from the material world entirely, we are then approaching a place where cosmic consciousness can be a reality. Because until that takes place, it cannot be so. So tonight I'm going to, we have time, I'm going to lead a little meditation. I am not going to say anything consciously. We will take a very simple thing to concentrate on. And I am going to ask that the light be put out when we do. And I'm going to lead a concentration on the love of one another. This is a divine thing because it is through that consciousness that you can only attain. Is that out there?